The lights in Helios 9 flickered again. Ethan Ray sighed and pushed himself up from the cold floor. He had been living alone on this small orbital outpost for 8 months, ever since the rest of the crew had been recalled to the inner colonies. The last transmission he'd received was a simple message. Hold position. Maintain power until further notice, he had laughed at first. Further notice, he had repeated. But 8 months later, he wasn't laughing anymore. The silence of space was heavier than he'd ever imagined. Every sound, the hum of air recyclers, the faint hiss of coolant pipes, had become his only company. He talked to machines just to hear a voice. Tonight was colder than usual. The heating system had gone out again, and Ethan was busy trying to fix a stubborn power relay when the door to his quarters suddenly hissed open. He turned fast. No one had docked. No alerts had sounded. But there she was, tall, graceful, and shining like liquid metal under the flickering lights. The woman who entered was not human. Her skin had a faint silver hue, her hair long and pale blue, flowing like strands of soft light. Her armor, cracked and scorched, looked older than any design Ethan had ever seen. She carried no weapon, only a thin wristband that pulsed faintly. For a moment, Ethan thought he was hallucinating again. He rubbed his eyes. "I must be losing it," he muttered. Then the woman spoke. Her voice was calm, strong, and clear. "This room will do," she said in perfect English. "I claim it," Ethan blinked. "You claim it?" "Yes," she said simply, walking past him as if he wasn't even there. "It's quiet, clean, and the air is stable enough for rest. I will remain here." Ethan raised a hand, unsure what to say. "Wait, you can't just walk into my room and—" She turned and gave him a confident look that stopped him mid-sentence. Her eyes glowed faintly, not like lamps, but like the soft shimmer of a distant moon. "I can," she replied. "You are human. This is your dwelling, therefore I am safe here," he stared. "Safe from what?" She hesitated. Her shoulders lowered slightly, and for a moment Ethan saw exhaustion behind that proud stance. "Raiders," she whispered. "They attacked my vessel. I escaped in a life pod before the ship exploded. I detected this outpost's emergency beacon and came here." Ethan frowned. "Raiders? There are no raider routes in this sector." "There weren't," she said, "until now." He slowly approached her, careful not to alarm her. The closer he came, the more he noticed. Burn marks across her armor, faint cuts on her hands, and the weary tremor in her breathing. She wasn't dangerous. She was wounded, all right, he said softly. "You can rest here. You look like you need it." She tilted her head slightly, studying him as if unsure of his motives. "You would allow a stranger into your quarters so easily?" Ethan gave a small shrug. "You already walked in," he said with a tired smile. "Might as well make yourself comfortable." That almost made her smile. Almost. When she sat on his bunk, the old metal frame creaked under her weight. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a brief moment. Ethan wasn't sure what to do. Call command, report an unknown life form, or offer her food. His training told him one thing, but his heart told him another. Finally, he asked, "Do you need medical help?" She opened her eyes again. "Your systems cannot heal Valori physiology. I only need rest." That word caught his attention. "Valori?" "Yes." She straightened slowly, though fatigue was clear in her every move. "I am Commander Lyra Tesh of the Valori Dominion. I commanded the exploration vessel Cerevian. Now, I am the last of it." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. The Valori Dominion was a name pulled from forgotten history, a species humanity had believed extinct for centuries. Old archives told tales of them. Explorers, teachers, the first to welcome humans to the stars during Earth's early expansion. "I thought your kind disappeared ages ago," Ethan said quietly. "We did not disappear," she replied, her voice flat but calm. "We retreated. The galaxy changed. War consumed us. Now it seems the darkness we fled has found us again." For a long moment, neither spoke. The soft hum of the air systems filled the silence. Finally, Ethan moved toward the small storage unit and pulled out a thermal blanket. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "It's not much, but it's warm." Lyra looked at it like it was a strange artifact. "You would share your comfort with me?" "Yeah," he said. "You're hurt and I don't get visitors often. Let's call it fair trade." She accepted it after a moment, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. The gesture seemed to surprise her more than anything he'd said. He sat at his desk again, pretending to check readings on the console. though his eyes kept glancing toward her. "So," he said after a pause, "why this room? The station has other cabins." "Because this one is alive," she said softly. Ethan looked confused. "Alive?" She nodded toward the walls. "The other rooms are empty and cold, but this one carries sound, scent, and memory. You live here. It has warmth." He didn't know how to respond to that. He chuckled awkwardly. "Well, I guess that's a compliment to my housekeeping." Lyra's lips curved in a faint smile, the first real one. "Perhaps it is." A sudden tremor shook the outpost. Alarms blared, lights flashed red, and Ethan jumped to his feet. "Meteoroid impact!" he shouted, rushing to the control panel, but Lyra was already standing, her movement swift and precise despite her injuries. "It's not debris," she said, scanning the screen. "That's a scanning pulse. Someone is looking for me." "Raiders?" "Yes." Ethan's hands flew across the console, sealing external shutters and powering down secondary systems. "If they detect energy signatures, we're done. I'll shut down the beacon." Lyra touched his shoulder, stopping him. "Do not. The beacon hides your life support signals within its code. Shut it down and the station will suffocate within hours." He froze. "Then what do we do?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "You will trust me." Her tone wasn't a request. It was a command, the kind that came from years of leadership. She pressed her wristband, and faint blue holograms formed around her hand, displaying alien script and energy lines Ethan couldn't understand. Within seconds, the scanning pulse outside vanished. Ethan stared. "What did you do?" "I redirected the signal," she said calmly. "Their sensors will now think this outpost exploded. They will search the debris instead of here. You can do that?" "I just did." For a moment, Ethan simply looked at her. This stranger who had walked into his life uninvited, taken over his room, and yet just saved him from possible death. He couldn't decide if he was annoyed, impressed, or both. Finally, he laughed softly. "You know, Commander Lyra Tesh, you have a strange way of introducing yourself." She looked at him with quiet amusement. "And you, Ethan Ray, have a strange way of surviving." He sat down again, rubbing his temples. "Well, welcome to Helios 9, Commander. You've claimed my bed. Try not to claim the rest of the station." "I make no promises," she said, that faint, confident smile returning. As the alarms died and the lights dimmed back to normal, the silence of the outpost felt different, not empty, but alive. For the first time in months, Ethan wasn't alone. Lyra lay back against the wall, eyes half closed, her voice soft but firm. "Rest now, human. Tomorrow I will help you repair your defenses. You will need them." Ethan looked at her, then at the stars outside the small window. "I guess I will." The hum of the station returned to its steady rhythm, and as he leaned back in his chair, Ethan realized something strange. The loneliness he'd carried for months had vanished, replaced by curiosity and an odd sense of peace. Somewhere in that silence, a new story had begun. The next morning came slowly on Helios 9. There was no sunrise, no birds, no sound of wind, only the faint hum of power conduits and the distant glow of a dying red star beyond the viewport. Ethan Ray stretched his sore arms and blinked at the soft light. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Commander Lyra Tesh, sitting quietly in his chair through the night, as if guarding something unseen. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "You didn't sleep?" "I do not require as much rest as you," Lyra replied calmly. Her silver blue eyes focused on the diagnostic panel she'd been studying for hours. "Your systems are stable, but your defense grid is outdated by at least 2 centuries. Ethan frowned, moving beside her. "Outdated? This station's using the latest human standard models." Lyra glanced at him, her expression a mix of patience and quiet amusement. "Human standards," she said gently, "are not galactic standards." That stung a little, though Ethan couldn't argue. She pressed a few keys, bringing up holographic data from her wristband. Strange symbols and lines of code appeared. "I can upgrade your defense array using Valori protocols," she said. "But I will need your trust again." Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You already saved this station once. I'd be a fool not to trust you now." Lyra gave a small nod. "Then we begin." For the next several hours, the station came alive with quiet teamwork. Lyra guided Ethan through each repair like a teacher showing a student ancient secrets. Her tone was never harsh, yet there was authority in every word. Ethan crawled through narrow tunnels, connecting fiber conduits and replacing burnt chips while Lyra managed the energy relays from the command deck. Each time he returned, sweat on his forehead, she would be waiting with another instruction ready. "Your people still use manual calibrators?" she asked at one point, sounding almost amused. "Hey," Ethan replied, grinning. "They've served us well." "That they have," she said softly. "And yet you survived where empires fell. Perhaps simplicity is your greatest strength," he chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Lyra's faint smile answered him before she turned back to her work. For a few moments, Ethan simply watched her. The grace in her movements, the way her hands hovered over glowing controls, the calm determination in her posture. She wasn't just a survivor. She was someone who had led battles, faced loss, and carried centuries of history in silence. When they finished the upgrades, the room lights brightened briefly as new energy fields stabilized around the outpost. The air itself seemed to vibrate with hidden strength. "Impressive," Ethan murmured. Lyra nodded. "Now you are not completely defenseless." Later that day, over a meal of reheated ration packs, Ethan tried to ask the questions that had been burning inside him since she arrived. "So these raiders you mentioned, who are they?" "Pirates?" Lyra looked thoughtful before answering. "Not pirates. They are scavengers of old technology. When they discovered that the Valori still existed, they hunted us across sectors. My ship carried a relic from before the War of Sundering, a device that could restore lost star maps. They wanted it." Ethan leaned forward. "And you destroyed it?" "I had no choice," she said quietly. "Some knowledge must remain buried until the galaxy is ready." Her voice held pain, deep and quiet. Ethan didn't press further. He simply listened. She continued, softer now. "The Valori once guided your kind. Long before your people joined the Galactic Concord, we helped build your first interstellar drives. We believed humanity would lead with wisdom. But something changed. Changed how?" Lyra turned toward the viewport where the red star glowed faintly. "You grew strong too quickly. You questioned every law, every hierarchy. You refused control." She looked back at him. "The Conquered feared you. Some called humanity the Iron Spark, the flame that could ignite chaos or light." Ethan frowned. "And what did the Valori believe?" Her expression softened. "We believed you would bring balance. We were wrong about the timing, not about the potential." For a long while, silence filled the room. Ethan tried to process her words. He had always known humans were viewed as unpredictable by the rest of the galaxy, but hearing it from someone who had lived through that history gave it weight. Hours later, the stillness of the outpost shattered again. The long-range sensors began to beep, an approaching signal. Ethan rushed to the console. "Ship detected. Bearing 23 degrees. Not transmitting identification." Lyra's expression hardened instantly. "They found us. Already?" "You said you hid the signal." "I did," she said, moving fast toward the defense panel. "But they adapt quickly. They must have traced the energy residue from my escape pod." Ethan's fingers flew across the console. "I can raise the external shields, but the main cannon's power cells are too weak. We can't fight off a full squadron." Lyra glanced around, assessing the situation like a commander on a bridge. "We will not fight. We will outthink them." Ethan almost laughed in disbelief. "You've got a plan?" She smiled faintly. "Always." Within minutes, the small outpost turned into a silent fortress. Lyra rerouted all energy outputs into the reactor's cooling system, masking their heat signature. Ethan worked alongside her, sealing the airlocks and dimming the interior lights until the station looked abandoned. The raider ship drifted into sensor range, a dark vessel shaped like a claw, scanning the debris field nearby. "They're sweeping for life signs," Ethan whispered. Lyra didn't move her gaze from the monitor. "Then we give them one." Before he could ask, she activated a pulse emitter, an ancient human device Ethan had repaired months ago but never used. Its signal flared across space, mimicking the outpost's core explosion signature. On the raider ship's sensors, Helios 9 had just blown apart. Ethan stared at her in amazement. "You used a human trick." She looked at him and said softly, "I learned from the best." The raider vessel lingered for a few minutes, then turned away, leaving only the echo of its engines. The outpost returned to silence once more. Ethan let out a long breath. "You really are something else." Lyra straightened, exhaustion visible but pride in her eyes. "You humans think survival is luck. It is not, it is choice, and today you chose well. When the danger passed, Ethan offered her a seat by the viewport. You ever think maybe fate brought you here? He asked quietly. Lyra tilted her head. Fate? Yeah, he said. The universe is huge. You could have crashed anywhere. But you ended up on my lonely little station. She thought for a long moment, her gaze on the glowing red star. Perhaps it is fate, she admitted. Or perhaps the galaxy decided I needed a reminder. A reminder of what? That not all humans are as the legends say. Ethan smiled a little. Dangerous and stubborn? Reckless, she corrected, but kind. Curious yet patient. And still foolish enough to offer warmth to a stranger who claimed his bed? He laughed quietly. Yeah, well, I wasn't using it much anyway. She gave him that same confident smile from the first night, the one that seemed to light the dull metal walls of the room. Then perhaps it was never just your bed, she said softly. Perhaps it was a meeting ground. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he looked out at the stars instead. The silence between them felt calm now, not empty. As the artificial night cycle began, Lyra adjusted the controls one last time and turned to him. Tomorrow I will teach you the Valori method of harmonic shielding. It may help protect your colony ship someday. You plan on staying that long? For a while, she said. Until I am strong enough to return to my people, or until you tire of me claiming your quarters. He smiled. Not likely. Lyra studied him for a moment before saying softly, then perhaps humanity's spark still burns bright. Outside the viewport, the red star shimmered faintly, sending slow waves of light across the hull. In that moment, Ethan realized something simple but powerful. The galaxy was far larger and older than he'd imagined. Yet here, two survivors from different worlds had found common ground not through command or conquest, but through trust, and somewhere deep inside him, a thought formed that he didn't speak aloud. Maybe this meeting wasn't the end of his solitude. Maybe it was the beginning of something greater. The days that followed on Helios 9 passed in a strange rhythm. Ethan and Lyra worked side by side, repairing the outpost, upgrading its defenses, and sharing stories about their vastly different worlds. Each evening, the station's lights dimmed, and the red star outside bathed the walls in a calm, steady glow. Yet a tension lingered. Lyra's presence, while comforting, was a signal to the galaxy that something unusual had occurred here. Ethan knew it. She knew it. And both of them could feel it in the faint tremor of the station's sensors each time a distant ship passed. One morning, the proximity alarm beeped sharply. Ethan raced to the console, heart hammering. Long-range readings. Incoming fleet. That's Valori, he said, surprise and apprehension in his voice. Lyra's posture stiffened. The fleet has detected my signal. They must have scanned the sector. They will not understand why I am here. With you, Ethan frowned. You think they'll attack? Not attack, she said, her tone steady. Interrogate, judge, and perhaps if they disapprove, condemn. For weeks, Ethan had seen Lyra command ships and lead crews, but never had he realized the full weight of her authority. She was a bridge between two civilizations now, one stranded, one isolated. And the fleet arriving could either make that bridge stronger or burn it entirely. The fleet appeared on the sensors, elegant, streamlined vessels with reflective hulls that shimmered in the dim light of the star. Ethan held his breath. They're beautiful, he murmured. They are centuries ahead of human design, Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. And they will expect obedience. You human are an anomaly in their eyes, a single engineer shielding a stranded commander from detection. They will not understand until they see proof. Ethan swallowed. Proof of what? Lyra's gaze softened, almost tender. Proof that humanity is more than survival instinct. That humanity is choice, courage, and honor. Ethan nodded slowly. Though he had never fought alongside alien fleets or navigated interstellar politics, he understood the moment's weight. The fleet docked at the edge of the outpost's sensor range. A single shuttle detached, moving toward the docking bay. Ethan braced himself. Lyra had prepared him for this. The interrogation, the questions, the need to show he was more than a human curiosity. The shuttle door opened, and a delegation of Valori officers entered the outpost. They were taller than humans, their skin shimmering silver and blue, their eyes bright and commanding. They carried an air of authority and subtle menace, and all attention focused immediately on Lyra. Commander Lyra Tesh, the lead officer said, voice echoing slightly in the metal hall. "We received a distress signal. You are here. With a human?" Lyra stepped forward, her posture unshakable. "Yes, I am here with Ethan Ray, a human engineer. He saved this outpost, prevented detection, and preserved life, and in doing so reminded me of what humanity is capable of." The officers murmured among themselves. Some frowned, others studied Ethan carefully. One stepped closer, voice sharp. "You expect us to accept this?" Lyra's eyes met his, steady and firm. "I expect you to witness it first." Ethan had no idea what she meant until Lyra guided him to the defense controls. "Show them what you did," she said. With calm precision, Ethan activated the systems they had rebuilt together. Lights danced along the walls. Energy fields pulsed along the hull, and holographic shields lit up the room with faint blue lines of force. Outside, the sensors displayed the collapsing debris fields they had used to mislead the raiders. "The human did this," Lyra said simply. "He not only repaired it, he improved it." Alone, without any previous knowledge of Valori tech, the officers were silent. Their eyes widened slightly as they absorbed the evidence of Ethan's skill. "Remarkable," one finally admitted. "A human, adapting to Valori systems without training?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. And he did it with courage, without hesitation, in the face of danger." One officer, more senior, turned sharply to Lyra. "And you allowed him access to classified systems?" "I trusted him," Lyra said simply. "And humanity has proven itself trustworthy in this instance." Ethan felt a small sense of pride and relief. He had never thought of himself as a hero, only as someone who fixed machines and survived. Yet now, in front of an entire alien fleet, his choice to act had carried weight. The lead officer's expression softened slightly. "Perhaps we underestimated humanity." Lyra stepped closer to Ethan, her voice quiet but filled with authority. "They may have, but now they will not." Later that day, after the officers had departed, Ethan and Lyra stood together near the viewport. The red star painted the walls in soft light. "You were impressive today," she said, voice almost gentle, "not because of your skills alone, but because of your choice to act, to help, to protect. That is what the Valori admire." Ethan scratched the back of his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Lyra said firmly. "Most would panic. Most would hide, but you faced the unknown and made the right decisions. That is rare." Ethan looked at her and felt a strange warmth. Not the warmth of the star, not the warmth of the station, but the quiet strength of someone who had been lost, yet chosen to trust another. Lyra stepped closer. "The fleet will remain in orbit for several cycles," she said. "They will assess the outpost, evaluate the human, and I will remain here until they accept that this alliance is necessary." Ethan frowned. "So you're saying they might leave me behind?" Lyra shook her head. "No, they will observe. But they will see what I already know. Humanity is not just survival. You are a spark that can ignite hope." Over the next few cycles, the outpost transformed. Ethan and Lyra worked together to upgrade shields, repair the reactor, and optimize long-range communication. With each passing hour, Ethan learned more about the Valori, their history, their technology, and their philosophy of exploration. Lyra's presence became less intimidating and more inspiring. She was still a commander, still someone from an alien civilization centuries ahead of humanity. Yet she treated him as an equal, a partner in survival and growth. One evening, as they ran final simulations on the energy grid, Ethan paused and looked at her. "You know," he said quietly, "I never thought I'd see the day when a Valori commander and a human engineer would run a station together." She glanced at him, her faint smile returning. "Perhaps it is not about what we expected, but what is needed. The galaxy is unpredictable, and sometimes the smallest spark can guide the brightest star." Ethan smiled. "Then I guess we're both sparks." Lyra's eyes softened. "Yes, and together we are stronger than the sum of our parts." When the Valori fleet departed, they left behind a message. The alliance between humans and Valori would be recognized formally. Ethan's role was acknowledged not as a human engineer, but as a symbol of human courage, innovation, and integrity. He walked through the quiet halls of Helios 9, feeling a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had known. And in the observation room, Lyra leaned against the viewport, watching the fleet disappear into the distance. "You claimed my bed when you arrived," Ethan said softly, "and now you've claimed my respect, my trust, And maybe the whole station, too. Lyra turned, giving him that same confident smile from the first night. Perhaps I claimed more than the station, she said. Perhaps I claimed hope. For both our peoples, Ethan chuckled. Well, hope looks good on you. She tilted her head, almost thoughtful. Hope looks good on humanity, too. I had almost forgotten that your kind was capable of this. They stood side by side, looking out at the stars. The red glow of the dying star reflected on the hull, soft and persistent, like the spark Ethan had kindled in the heart of the Valori commander. In that moment, Helios 9 was no longer just a lonely outpost in a dying system. It was a symbol, proof that even in the darkest corners of space, courage, trust, and collaboration could light the way. The galaxy was watching, yes, but Ethan and Lyra knew the truth. They didn't need approval or recognition. Humanity had proven itself in the most important way, by choosing to act with integrity, courage, and partnership. And for the first time in months, Ethan felt truly at home. Lyra gave him one last glance, that faint, confident smile lingering. The galaxy will remember this day, not because of fleets, not because of technology, but because of a human who dared to act. Ethan looked out at the stars, and in the quiet of the outpost he knew she was right. Humanity had made its mark once again.